I can already hear it now. There's a networking event that you have to go to, and your first thought is, ugh, this is my worst nightmare. Networking events are so draining. And besides, I'm an introvert. What if I told you that I'm an introvert and I have actually created and found a method that works for me to network, and instead of feel drained, I actually feel energized as a result? In this episode, I'm going to teach you the entire methodology so that you can implement it your very next networking event. Let's go. Hey, I'm Zoe Asher, a friendship coach who has spent the past 15 years sharing over 500 meals with strangers to help understand exactly what it takes to build rich, meaningful friendships to help you level up yours. And though this episode is about networking, friendship is the undertone of it too, because when you go to a networking event, what is the goal? To actually build a relationship with somebody in the room. And this episode was actually inspired by a recent coaching call that I had with one of my clients who was prepping for a networking event and wanted a better outcome than all of the other networking events he had been to before. And as we were discussing it, I thought, okay, wow, we actually need to bring this to the podcast because this is something a lot of people feel. So my friendship coaching client is an introvert and feels socially awkward, and also feels most of the time that he doesn't know how to have a good conversation with somebody else, let alone leave a conversation when it's time for it to end. And just overall, it's a very high stress environment for him. And he feels drained after every event he has to go to for work, though networking is a very important piece of what he does. And this makes total sense, right? Because you're giving a lot of yourself at these type of events. Well, I should say that is the goal, is to give something and receive something too. So let's just go into the steps that I talked through with him that have worked for me. First off, we need to talk about the fact that what it means to be an introvert is that you recover alone. In your quiet time, you get energy by being by yourself. And I say that because I think sometimes we confuse introversion for being shy or just feeling uncomfortable. But we need to set that frame of if you're an introvert, you are going to recover on your own. And I'm saying that because just up front, if we set our intention and have an expectation and an understanding of what this will require, things will go a lot differently for us because we'll be in a different mindset and mental state. So instead of saying like, oh, I'm an introvert, this is going to drain me. What if you said, I am an introvert and I know what this requires, and I am going to actually create margin the day after this networking event so that I can recover and rejuvenate myself on my own alone time. We often have this misconception that for a networking event, you have to be an extrovert, which means you get energy by talking to people. But here's how I have found a way to get energy having conversations with people as an introvert. It's with depth. So I set my intention when I go to any type of event like this, that my goal is not to just generically network, but I actually make my intention and goal, I am going to have a meaningful conversation with at least one person in the room and get to know them a lot better. And I'm setting that as my intention because therefore that conversation is going to bring me energy because I am going to be able to go deeper with them. And I'm coming in with this lens of what questions do I want to learn about them? I'm priming my brain for this conversation before it even happens. We'll get back to the questions part shortly. So first piece is set an intention. What is your goal? Goal is to make a connection with someone by having a meaningful conversation with somebody in the room. And knowing, yes, I'm an introvert and I am going to expend energy knowing that I will be able to recover on the other side of it. Quick pause for a second. If you're currently questioning a friendship in your life, thinking, is this time for the friendship to end? What do? I don't know what's happening. I made something that I think is really going to help. Most adults were never actually taught how to evaluate our friendships. So we stay too long in the wrong ones, or we walk away from the right ones. That's why I created a free guide called 12 Questions to Ask Before You End a Friendship. It will walk you through the exact questions that you need to ask and think through on your own to figure out whether a friendship needs repair, a real conversation, or it's time to let go altogether. I've spent the last 5 years working as a friendship coach, and my insights on relationships have been featured in Bloomberg, Newsweek, Success Magazine, and more. So if you want clarity on a confusing friendship in your life, grab the free guide using the QR code you see on the screen or the first link you see in the description below. Let's finally get some clarity on where we stand with those friendships in our life. When chatting with my client, he had brought up this point of how he had observed that at these networking events, there was a manager who he considered to really, quote, work the room, meaning he was talking to everybody, but not just like chatting and, being entertaining, but he was being really intentional with the questions he was asking. And it was almost like he was picking up on where previous conversations had left off. So he was really impressed with this and said, that's something I want to learn to be able to do. And so I shared with him that this is a skill that you can learn, is to be able to pick up on a conversation where you left off. And it has nothing to do with having really good memory recall. It's about setting yourself up for success when it comes to asking questions, thinking about things that you will remember, that will leave an impact and a mark on you. So here's 3 types of questions that you can ask to be able to go back and pick up on this when you continue to see them. The goal is curiosity-driven questions. That's the overarching part of this. Or questions where you're aiming to get a story, because we remember stories. That's just part of our DNA. Let's say you're asking a question, it's curious, you're looking for a story. You can also make the question future-centered or positive-centered. Here's an example of a future-centered question. Hey, Josh, I haven't seen you since winter, and thank heavens that it's so much nicer outside now. What exciting summer plans do you and your family have? Now, that is a future-centered question, which is great because it's priming the brain when someone hears this question to look for good things. And then you can get into this conversation, my family's planning on going to Rehoboth Beach later in July. We're excited, but there's nothing much outside of that. Rehoboth Beach. Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. What made you choose that beach? And then they get into a conversation where they're saying, this is where my family went growing up. It just holds special meeting. And I am asking these questions because I am genuinely curious. And now they just shared a story with me because I chose to pull the thread on that a little bit more and didn't just be like, sweet, cool. Yeah, like where those awkward moments can happen. It's because we're not actually being curious to go another level and layer deeper with the person in front of us. Here's a positive-centered question. What has been the best part of your week? Now, that does feel a little bit weird if you're coming in cold with it, but it's all about how you're framing it. So sometimes I will go up to strangers at a networking event, and this is exactly what I'll say. Hey, I'm Zoe. Networking events are so awkward because, it's like talking to strangers, but I'm so sick of being asked, how are you? Here's my question to you, stranger. What's your name, by the way? Yes. Okay. Anna, what has been the best part of your week? Like, I'm making a joke and calling out how uncomfortable this environment is in the normal rhythm that it usually is. And I'm trying to break the script and break the rhythm. And then we're laughing and we're thinking differently. And therefore, we can go into a deeper conversation. Okay, so obviously the goal is being curious, ask a positive-centered question or a future-centered question. Here's a good layup of a question if you are in a management role of any type, because it could open a very interesting conversation. If you have an actual goal of getting to know the people you work with better in the work that they do, feel free to ask this question. What can I do in my role to help make your job better? That stumps a lot of people. Well, let's see, I work in IT, you work in, accounting. I'm not really sure. But then you start workshopping it and you're thinking of new innovative ways that you and your separate teams can collaborate together. I always love asking that question because it can open up a totally different conversation than you were originally expecting. And then it ends up helping you in your role too. And one of my favorite pieces of insight when you are at a networking event is to ask for someone's advice on something, especially if you work for the same organization, but you're in 2 very different sectors. Ask for their advice on a problem you're currently facing in your job. Now, you might have originally heard that and thought, Why would I ask for someone's advice who has no idea what I do? Here's why. They might not need to know what you do, but they know what your end goal is because you both work for the same organization. So if you are goal aligned, then you are getting someone's insight and creativity that you are simply not able to have thought of on your own because you have a completely different lens and context than they do. It's bringing fresh eyes and fresh perspective to a problem. And it doesn't need to just be advice related in your job. You can ask for personal advice too. That's actually a great way to build rapport with someone because you are showing them, you are giving them the gift of going first and saying, hey, I want to trust you. I would love your insight. And when you ask for someone's insight, it's a compliment. Whoa, thanks for asking. I feel honored by that. I'm not sure I'm equipped. They could go that direction, but they can also share something that you were not expecting. And then the best part of it is it creates buy-in because now that you've asked for their advice, they're going to be curious as to what the result is on said problem project that you are working on. So that becomes a bridge for future connection. And so hopefully you're already seeing how I'm reframing this whole concept of networking, that it's becoming, yes, there's still effort that goes into it, but it doesn't need to be a drain. It could be something that gives you life because you're setting yourself up for success in present conversations and future ones. And my client brought up a situation that maybe you're finding is incredibly relatable. Let's say that there's someone in the room that you want to talk to, but they are very popular, for lack of a better word, and everyone wants to talk to them. And you spend every networking event almost all day long glancing over, and every single time you glance over, they're talking to someone else, and you're thinking, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to get a chance to talk to them again today, even though they're the person that I want to talk to. So the question that was asked to me was, how do I actually get a conversation with them? Like, I don't want to, barge in. And I said, that totally makes sense. Here's a way that you can leave a breadcrumb for them. As you walk by them and they're in the middle of a conversation, this is normal at networking events that people pull you different directions. You're not going to pull them a different direction. You're going to redirect their attention for a moment. So here's what you do. When they're in the middle of their conversation, watch their body language first off before you go in. If they are both like locked in and cannot see anything else and neither person's eyes are diverting, this is not the moment to do it. But if there's like occasional glancing around and they're having a lighthearted conversation and it looks like, okay, they're talking and I'm not going to be rude, but there's definitely some wiggle room, then what I would do is I would walk up to the one person, tap them on the shoulder. Hey, Mike, guys, don't want to interrupt. Just want to let you know, I want to chat with you later today. That's it. Then you walk away. You didn't pull their attention away. You didn't break the conversation permanently. You just gave a gap. And then they're like, okay, cool. But now you're leaving a breadcrumb and they know to follow up with you later because you want to talk to them. And let's be honest, like if you get that from somebody else, very rarely are you going to be annoyed. Our first response is usually, oh, someone wants to talk to me. I love that. Let's do it. And therefore, by making them a priority to you, you also become a priority to them because you named your intention and your goal. And because networking events can feel uncomfortable and there's a lot of coupling and groupings and cliques that form, how about this hyper relatable scenario that was asked about? He said, what if you see like a circle of 6 people and you're in the circle, but really when you get into the circle, you find out that it's actually just 2 people talking to each other and 4 people listening. And I laughed and said, so it feels like you're listening to a podcast. And he said, exactly. It feels like I'm not even there, but I don't know what to do. And maybe you just heard that and you're like, I don't know what to do either. It's a really weird situation. Let me give you permission that you don't need to feel uncomfortable for pulling into a different conversation. If you are not the direct person that someone is talking to, you absolutely can walk away, take someone else in the group and start a side conversation. And I'll show you how to start that side conversation in a second because your body language is important. But I say that because we get in our heads about like, what if they think I'm rude? If they were not paying attention to you in the conversation or they're not talking to you, they're not noticing when you're gone. They're making the person in front of them their priority, which I'm not mad about that. I actually want to make the people who I'm talking to the priority too. And I've been in situations where I've been in like a really serious conversation with somebody and I see someone walking over. So I will actually adjust my body language so it becomes clear just through a social cue. This is not the time to listen into this conversation. What is this body language cue that I'm giving? I am turning my full torso, full attention, and pointing both my toes in the one person's direction that I'm talking to. I know men often do this a lot more, where you will have a conversation and you're actually talking side to side to one another and turning your head this way instead of actually facing the person. Now, just from a general standpoint, when you do this, it's actually cueing to someone that they're technically welcome into the conversation. Like you're open to letting new people into the fold because your torso isn't facing that person. Your torso is facing out. So you could find yourself in this situation. So by adjusting it is you start turning your body towards the person. You start turning your full body as much as you can towards the person that you're talking to and turn your toes towards them as well. It really is weird, but how you point your toes, if they're visible, not actually point them, but the direction that you are aiming your toes signals a lot to somebody. Let's say that you wanted to get out of a conversation, like it was going too long and you're like, okay, this is great. First off, if that is the case, stop asking more questions. I hear so many people say to me, like, yeah, I wanted to get to know this person a little bit better. And then they just like went to town and 20 minutes later, they're still talking about the same story. And here's what's happening. You keep feeding them more questions. Like you can lean in or you can pull back. And I am talking about literally doing that, but also figuratively too. A way that you can pull back from a conversation when it's coming towards a close is actually turn your body away from the person. If you are trying to move on to a different conversation, turn that torso so that you're not directly facing them. And instead of both of your toes being straight in front of you, turn them towards the direction you are trying to walk as the conversation closes. So your body language shows whether you are opened or opening the conversation or closing a conversation. And then obviously your words and your actions are doing that too. Here's another body language tip that could help you with it. If you are someone who is really intentional, well, let me put it this way. A really intentional listener during a story nods their head really slowly. And when you do that, research has shown that people usually talk 67% longer when you give a slow triple nod to the person. It's almost like you're encouraging them. Yes, keep going. I am so invested in this. I'm hanging on every word you say. If you actually are trying to close the conversation, though, you can pick up that head speed on your nod. Because you know how sometimes you're trying to tell a story and someone's like, yeah. I don't know why they're making these noises, but they're moving their head really quickly. And you think, oh, they sound like they're in a rush. Maybe they are. But you can also use that same psychology when you're in this type of scenario where if you are like, okay, we got to wrap this up. Yes, let's increase the head nod. And you're still being kind. You still want to hear the story. You're still invested in them, but you are cueing, okay, let's bring it to a close with that because I need to make sure I connect with other people in the room if your goal is to connect with more than one person, of course. Other body language tips, tilt your head to one side as you're listening. This is a social cue that genuinely shows the person, I am actually leaning into this. I am turning my ear towards you. I want to hear more of what you're saying. And I know how comfortable it is to cross your arms. But if I spent this whole episode crossing my arms, you would get the vibe subconsciously that she doesn't really care that much. She's maybe a little bit closed off. I say that because it's so comfortable, but it's actually being a detraction when you're talking to somebody. Keep those arms open. Use hand gestures. In fact, don't hide your hands at all because when we hide our hands, maybe you've experienced this in a Zoom call, you start to get sketched out by somebody. Why can't I see their hands? What are they hiding? Why are they putting their hands in their pocket? You don't want to give the appearance that you're hiding anything. You're actually being really open. You want to get to know somebody and you're going to use every element of body language to help that be the case. and give them peace that that's your goal too, even without needing to say it. So going back to that example that my client gave of the manager who worked the room, he was able to have meaningful conversations and close the conversations relatively quickly too, to make sure that he was able to have contact with everybody that was in the room. And so I was sharing with him that I am betting that the methodology that the manager used was being super intentional, hyper intentional with the questions that were asked, because they were story centered last time. So he was going to follow up on it this time. Hey, I know last time we were talking, you said that you had just gotten a new dog. How is the dog? How is your family? How old are your kids? 4, are they going to preschool? Is this your first time the kids are going to preschool? Are you feeling nervous? I remember that feeling. Like finding me too, I can relate to that. Opportunities in the conversation is helping you understand more about them. And if you want to go a step further because you really are thinking, I don't remember anything, here's something I have done before. I literally will have a notepad, or after I end a conversation with someone, in my notes and contacts section, I will type one thing I learned about them. And then the next time I talk to them, I'm actually prepping before the event. Hey, I'm going to see them. This is what we talked about last time. Boom. Here's my reconnect question with them. See, I have done this whole episode to prove to you that introversion does not need to be an excuse or, an inhibitor for you. Yes, it will require effort, and yes, you are worth that effort, because the goal is to connect with others. And on the other side of that, we can take a nap. We can have time to ourselves to be able to know that we can rejuvenate. So do not be discouraged, but rather be encouraged that you are capable of this. You are capable of learning the skills, and you are capable of becoming a person that everyone wants to have a conversation with in the room too. And if you feel like you have trouble asking questions, then you're going to want to check out this episode up here, where I break down my favorite questions to ask when I'm getting to know someone new. We'll catch you next time.